time since I did a live video, but I really want to share this information with you about 504 plans because I wanted to know for a couple years how I could get a 504 plan without getting a diagnosis, because we all know it's very expensive to go to a neuropsychologist and get an evaluation for dyslexia. And I kind of thought, well, what are the purposes of getting that diagnosis? Is it just so that I can get a 504 plan or accommodations in the workplace? A 504 plan, in order to get one, you have to, number one, have a physical or mental impairment, and number two, have a record of such impairment. So that's where I thought I needed the diagnosis, but a record could be anything that you could use like in a court, like evaluations, work samples, doctor's reports, other family IEPs that say that they have a reading disability. So I'll tell you what I used for our 504 plan, records. And then number three, you have to be regarded as having such an impairment. So the 504 plan, here's some basics. It's not under the IDEA law like IEPs are. 504 plans are part of, it's actually, the name comes from Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And they are enforced by the Office of Civil Rights, which is part of the Department of Education, or a component of the U.S. Department of Education. So the Office of Civil Rights, just for your information, they say that like 504 plans, they don't have a certain timeline like IEPs do, where you put in the request and then 10 days later they have to reply to you, and 60 days later you're having the meeting. The wording by the Office of Civil Rights says that it requires the evaluation to be done within a reasonable amount of time and prior to any change in placement. Normally there's somebody in charge of 504 plans at each school, and in a lot of cases it's the administrator. So I sent an email to him and his secretary and the teacher saying that I wanted to have a 504 plan meeting because my son Daniel, he was kind of falling behind. But my main concern is that when he takes tests, sometimes he would tell me, I didn't really know what that question said. I mean, this would be for math or any subject. And so I wanted him to be able to get those tests read aloud. So before we had the meeting, I sent copies of some records that I had collected to prove that Daniel has dyslexia or symptoms of dyslexia. And so some of those were like the Barton Reading and Spelling System post tests at the end of the book. I gave those tests to Daniel and I showed the results to the teacher and the principal. And I also did the Equipped for Reading Success test. That's by David Kilpatrick, and I'll put links to these in the description. So I was able to show them like phonologically, his phonological processing is down at like a kindergarten level. And the teacher, she was kind of surprised. She said he can decode, his comprehension isn't good, but she said his decoding seems fine. And she said, I have kids in my class who they can't hardly read at all. He's in 3rd grade, and she said, I have to read everything to them. And so it's really important as parents that we are aware of, the different ways dyslexia manifests itself, because I was able to tell her, yes, he can decode, but because it's more of a struggle for him and it's not as natural. I mean, we've been doing all about reading at home for years and working on this stuff for years. So he doesn't have the same symptoms as other kids with dyslexia. And I told her, his comprehension is low because it takes a lot of extra effort for him to read through things. And sometimes he misreads words. So that affects his comprehension on the test, and then the test isn't showing what he actually knows. Actually, my principal, he was like really laid back about all of this proof stuff. I thought there might be some resistance, but he was like, we believe you. We know you have a family history of it. We need these documents for like the 504. Legally, it's supposed to be attached. So it was good that I had them, but I didn't have to convince them. Then we talked about where he's really struggling in class and came up with the 504 plan, the plan. So number one, I wanted to make sure that he doesn't get any points off for misspelled words. And number 2, I wanted to make sure the assessments are read aloud to him. And the teacher, she said, I already have a group that I read the tests aloud to, so he can join the group. And of course, she wouldn't have put him in there, but I noticed at home when I work with him, he needs me to read him the homework questions or the test questions, or he misreads them. And then the third thing that was really, really helpful for our plan was that every week he has a reading comprehension test. And so the teacher said that she will let me know the week, like the Monday before the test, which they do on Friday, what story they're going to be reading in the textbook. I have access to that online. And then if she lets me know what the test is going to be about, I can read it with Daniel at home and help him with his comprehension so that he can do better on his test. And so the wording says, the wonder story that will be assessed for the week will be listed for parent on the front of his weekly homework packet to be assessed on the SB link for practice. And that's really helped a lot. I'm really glad that we could get this 504 plan without a diagnosis. None of my kids have actually been diagnosed for dyslexia. They're just getting services because of the psychological tests, or in this case, because of tests that I did for Daniel. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. And if this helps, please share it. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas. All right, take care.